All right, let's just dive right into this explainer and transport ourselves back to the absolute golden age of American muscle cars. Look, if you've got even a passing interest in automotive history, you already know the Titans. But today, we're doing something a bit different. We're stepping out of the spotlight and into the shadows to uncover the brilliant, sometimes downright brutal machines that time almost completely forgot.
I mean, we all know the icons, right? The Mustangs, the GTOs. They are legends for a reason. But what about the budget supercars? What about the weird, wild experiments and those sneaky loophole rockets that got left in their dust? Well, those are exactly the stories we're going to unlock for you right now.
So really try to picture this. It's a simpler time, totally defined by sensory thrills and visceral analog adrenaline. You've got foot-operated dimmer switches. You're wrapped in this protective veil of sound. You know the one, that unmistakable deep snarl of a massive large cube V8 engine practically shaking the pavement beneath you, exhaling right through a dual exhaust. There were no computers here, no microchips doing the work for you. It was all about raw, unfiltered mechanical connection.
And we're going to trace this whole historical joyride across 4 incredibly defining years. We'll start with the pioneers of raw power in 1962, move right into the oddities and gentleman brawlers of 65, hit absolute peak drag strip madness in 69, and finally, look at 71 when everyone was just desperately dodging the insurance man. It's really this fascinating arc from total rebellion to eventual regulatory demise.
Okay, let's kick things off before the Pontiac GTO even became known as the Great One. We're talking about the 1962 Super Duty Catalina. Now, while Ford and Chevy were busy pushing these massive, incredibly heavy giants like the 427 Galaxy and the 409, the Super Duty, well, it was a totally different beast. Back then, if you said Super Duty and Pontiac in the same breath, it meant one thing: you were out to win on the street. These things were essentially factory race cars. They used lightweight aluminum panels to just completely dominate those heavier rivals. This was the pure analog adrenaline that literally started the street performance rebellion.
Then, enter the 1963 Studebaker Avanti. Honestly, this machine looked like a UFO just landed on the highway. In an era where literally everyone was stamping heavy steel, the Avanti rocked a revolutionary fiberglass body. Underneath all that futuristic styling, it packed a modified 289 cubic inch V8, and get this, you could even order it with an optional Paxton supercharger to forcefully cram air into the engine for explosive speed. Studebaker might have hit the historical boneyard by 66, but the Avanti? It remains a massive testament to forward-thinking design. It was just way too fast and way too alien-like to stick around.
Moving into our oddities era around 65, we stumble onto the Rambler Marlin. Built by American Motors, this was a, let's say, highly unique attempt to cash in on the youth market and go head-to-head with the Barracuda. It had this strange, sweeping fastback body style that you just didn't see on a car that size. But it wasn't just about quirky looks. Actually, it was way ahead of the curve when it came to tech, being one of the few cars at the time to pack standard front disc brakes. It's a real shame it kind of slipped through the cracks of history.
Next up, we've got the 1967 Mercury Cyclone GT. So Mercury was aggressively marketing themselves as the maker of the man's car, and the Cyclone GT was the absolute crown jewel of that ad campaign. It basically picked up where Ford's standard Fairlane GT/A left off, but injected a huge dose of opulence and aggressive style. I mean, check out that twin scoop hood that screams serious intentions. Underneath, it hit a Marauder 390 V8 pushing out 320 horsepower. But even with all that power and sheer presence, it really struggled to step out of Ford's massive shadow.
Now, Buick, they took a completely different approach here. The 1967 Buick GS340 was kind of the pioneer of this mini-muscle movement. People called it the gentleman's hot rod. On the outside, it looked incredibly dangerous, but pop the hood and you'd find a smaller, much more manageable small block V8. And why does that matter? Because it was brilliant. It kept both the sticker price and those dreaded insurance rates super low. You could cruise around in this elegant GS during the summer of love and totally skip the typical muscle car financial headache.
Of course, elegance definitely wasn't for everyone. By the time we hit peak drag strip madness in 69, things got unhinged. Take the AMC SC Rambler. I mean, just imagine a machine so wild, it actually came with a giant blue arrow on the hood, literally pointing right at its own massive air intake. You know, just to make absolutely sure you knew exactly where all that power was coming from. Built with the Hearst Company specifically for the drag strip, this traffic-stopping monster and its 315 horses were built to make life completely miserable for any GTO or Roadrunner brave enough to line up next to it.
And while the Mustang was out there hogging all the spotlight, Mercury was quietly pulling off some absolute calculated deceit. They released the 69 Cyclone CJ as their ultimate budget racer, and they dropped the thundering 428 Cobra Jet engine in it.
Now, Ford notoriously told insurance agents this loophole rocket only produced a modest 335 horsepower, just to keep the premiums from skyrocketing. But the real number, the horsepower actually tearing up the asphalt, yeah, that was likely a massive 410.
Which brings us to a really fascinating number, 2,175. Because it was such a stealthy, under-the-radar release compared to its flashier Ford cousins, 2,175 is the total number of Mercury Cyclone CJs that actually moved off dealer lots for the entire year of 1969. And because of that incredibly low production run, this sneaky little budget racer is a seriously rare collector's gem today.
Heading into the 1970s, AMC clearly wasn't done making a racket. Enter the 1970 AMC Rebel, flawlessly nicknamed The Machine. This was AMC's ultimate no-holds-barred muscle car offering. It practically demanded your attention with this wildly audacious, patriotic red, white, and blue paint scheme. It packed serious heat, too, with a 340-horsepower 390 V8. And, this is the coolest part, it featured a functional hood scoop with the tachometer integrated right into the hood itself. It put the RPM gauge directly in your line of sight, so you never had to look down. It gets overlooked today, but the Machine could easily go toe-to-toe with Detroit's absolute hottest offerings.
Okay, let's take a breath and slow things down a bit, because as we hit 1970, the party was effectively ending. Rising insurance premiums became, as our source material so perfectly puts it, a slow-developing poison for the entire muscle car industry. The pure, completely unchecked explosive power of the 60s was suddenly just too expensive for the average young person to actually insure. The era was, quite frankly, beginning to die.
So how did Detroit respond to this poison? With pure, fascinating desperation. Take the 1970 Oldsmobile Rally 350. They branded it as a junior muscle car. It used a respectable, but definitely not terrifying 310 horsepower, 350 V8. It was designed specifically to slip right under the insurance man's radar while keeping that sporty feel. But here is the absolute wildest part. To make sure it still turned heads despite the smaller engine, Oldsmobile painted every single one of them blindingly Sebring yellow. And I mean everything. They even painted the bumpers yellow. It was just this desperate, brilliant visual distraction.
Now, to fully appreciate our final car, we really have to talk about the culture of the time. Back in the late 60s and early 70s, if something was heavy, it simply meant it was cool or hip. Chevrolet looked at that cultural vibe, looked at the rapidly shrinking budget market, and thought, we need to capture that exact feeling right now before the entire muscle car era collapses.
And that light bulb moment gave us the 1971 heavy Chevy Chevelle. They marketed it as an entry-level performance option that was, quote, heavy on looks and long on price. As the true muscle car era made its absolute last stand against crushing regulations and insane insurance costs, the heavy Chevy gave the youth of America one final glorious chance to own a genuinely cool piece of Detroit iron before the performance wasteland of the mid-70s officially took over. So, what's the big takeaway here? The mythical American muscle car roared into history, leaving behind this incredible legacy of unapologetic style and just sheer brute force that, let's be honest, we are never going to see again. These cars we've explored today, the Marlins, the Avantes, the Cyclones, they really aren't just cars anymore. They are archaeological relics. They're vital pieces of our history, and they are undeniably pieces of mechanical art.
So, thinking back on all the incredible analog machines we've just unpacked in this explainer, I've got to ask, which of these forgotten brawlers would you want parked in your garage? From that factory race-ready Super Duty Catalina all the way to the blindingly yellow Oldsmobile Rally 350, hit the comments and let us know your top pick. Thank you so much for coming along on this deep dive into automotive history with me, and as always, keep learning.